Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome to Isla Nublar, which is the Sandbox mode of Jurassic World Evolution. So a lot of you have been asking for me to jump into the Sandbox version of the game, and I obviously have wanted to come into the Sandbox version of the game. If you don't know Geekism very well, Geekism is all about Sandbox, it's all about creative, it's all about trying to squeeze as much creativity as we can out of video games. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click on the like button, and if you're new here and you'd like to see lots more creative gaming for grown-ups, all you have to do is click subscribe. So yeah, we're all about getting a bit of creativity out of the game. Now obviously this game is made by Frontier, it's not Planco, okay, so it isn't Planet Coaster, there's not that much creativity, but I still think there's a lot we can do with how we lay out our dinosaurs, how we lay out our park. In the future, I would love to see some more customization options, so you know, benches, street lamps, and you know, statues, fountains, all that kind of thing. I'd love to see them add a few bits like that in the future to kind of just make the parks a little bit more real. But for now, there are still things we can do, and it is quite fun actually trying to squeeze as much sort of individuality as we can out of the current the game system. Now the Sandbox does work a little bit different to other games because you have to actually go and unlock the features in the single player. So this series is going to run alongside the regular career mode, so we're going to be carrying on that first series that we started, because I am really enjoying just sort of playing from a managerial point of view and kind of you know, solving the problems that the game's giving us and finding solutions for actually how to manage the dinos and manage the park guests and all that sort of stuff. But I do obviously, you know, really enjoy sort of being creative and letting my hair down and you know, having unlimited money and that sort of stuff. So what we're going to be doing is running alongside the career mode. We're going to be going into the career mode, unlocking the islands, unlocking the dinos, unlocking the buildings through research and missions and all that sort of stuff. And then every time we've got a bit more stuff to put in, we'll head over to the Sandbox version and then add those in, basically. So that's what the plan is going to be there. We're starting off pretty standard. We're going to have a bit of a main street, but rather than sort of lay this out like a theme park, I am actually going to try and lay it out a little bit more like a zoo. One thing that zoos very often have is as you come in, the animals start off a bit rubbish, okay, but not necessarily rubbish, but they usually have some smaller animals, maybe some birds or something, like maybe some capuchin monkeys or something like that. Smaller animals, smaller cages, and that's something I really wanted to do here with the first exhibit that you come to. Basically, you come off the monorail, and this is kind of the thing that welcomes you. And obviously, you know, this is dinosaurs. We can't place dinosaurs in tiny exhibits like this. You'd maybe get away with one or two Struthiomimuses in here or something like that, which we may have to do. But I had an idea. There is a small creature in the game that I thought we could try and make an exhibit for, and that is the goat. Okay, so the goat is used as a live bait for carnivorous dinos in the game, okay, and I thought I placed a few down. I noticed in my single player game, slight spoilers here because obviously, you know, this is coming, sometimes the episodes aren't going to line up perfectly, so slight spoilers here, but I placed down a couple of goat providers, whatever you want to call them, and before I placed any dinos into there, I was just getting ready basically for a couple of dinos to come in. I noticed the ghosts just sort of potter around, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I also noticed that when you delete them, the goats stay. There you go. So after just a little bit of playing around, placing these down, deleting them, and doing it a couple of times, you have a goat exhibit. Now, unfortunately, as I play through this level, it does look like, unfortunately, they do despawn after a little while, because we've got probably about a dozen in here at the moment, and at the end of the video there's only 5 left, so it does look like they despawn, unfortunately. So instead I may look at going and putting a couple of something like a couple of struths in there or something. The problem was, because I wanted this sort of small exhibit with the path all the way around it, if you put actual dinos in there, you're obviously going to need a gate because you need your rangers to get in and resupply food. Now I suppose we could sort of micromanage it and just place some food down and delete it when it's empty and replace it with a full one or something like that. So maybe we could do that, and you probably get away with a couple of struths in there because they're really easy to keep happy. So we placed a couple of the first buildings there. We still have quite a few buildings to unlock in the career mode, so again, as we sort of carry on the game, we will sort of come back and open those up as much as we can. But the 2 buildings I've got there, I'm really happy with them because they're almost corner buildings. You know, they're all the buildings have just a single entrance on a single panel, but these ones here, they have like corners built up a little bit in one corner, and luckily it's the opposite corner, so you can place one of them opposite each other, and then you've got sort of like almost like weenies, I guess, these sort of larger point areas as you come into the main street. Here I wanted a little bit of a plaza area opening up as we go onto the monorail. What I would like to have done, to be honest with you, is just have the monorail that comes into the park carry on, but unfortunately you can't do that. The monorail that comes into the park is outside of the park boundaries, so you have to build a separate monorail system. I kind of understand that. You know, at the end of the day, we had to find a way of getting people into the park. It's much more elegant than the whole people walking through a cave on Blanco, so I'm personally okay with the monorail just coming in and dropping people off and clearing off again. So you know, maybe in the future other options would come about, you know, people coming in on boats and planes and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, but there's much more important things we would like in the game, I think. So here we go, we start placing the monorail out. The idea behind the monorail is not only will it take you to different areas of the park, obviously we're going to have a separate area where there's going to be some hotels and things like that, another area where we're going to have a really large sort of safari, basically using the gyrospheres once we get those unlocked, and this monorail will take you to all of them. It's also going to act a little bit like the transport system in Epcot, or something like Living with the Land at also Epcot. No, sorry, transport systems at Tomorrowland in Magic Kingdom. Living in the Land is in Epcot. Where they kind of show you a little bit backstage and a little bit behind the scenes. So the monorail's going to do that as well. Backstage is something I want to try and implement into this park. If it's just for looks, then it's just for looks, because the guests do kind of seem to wander around all over the place. But I very much wanted that separation of you know, guest-facing areas and backstage areas. So here you'll see that we've got a main street with our buildings in here, using a bit of path there just to kind of change it up a little bit, really, using path around the back of these and some fencing and stuff like that. Again, we're very limited in what we have at the moment. Path system actually works pretty well in this game, though. I'm actually quite impressed with it. It's an improvement on the Planco path system, so you can do some really nice sort of plaza areas with it. It's still got little kinks, but overall it works pretty well. So yeah, there's not really much we can do here, but one thing we can make the most of are the in-game fences. This heavy steel fence, I think it all called, is actually quite a nice looking fence. It's just sort of like plain bars across, so we can use that mostly as a decoration, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, there's no way of placing gates across paths or anything like that, so we can't actually stop the guests working around these kind of backstage paths, but they don't tend to go there because there's no dinos there, there's no stores there or anything like that. Love this sort of curve system here on the fences as well. Again, it works relatively intuitively once you figure out kind of what you're doing. You'll see here that I shift to the lighter fence because this is actually going to be our first sort of proper dino enclosure, which is going to be a Struth enclosure. Again, I'm going to go very much for the sort of standard zoo layout, that as you go into the park you start off with some light herbivores, you start off with things like you know, sort of monkeys, lots of sort of like hooved animals, you know, caribou, all sort of crazy things like that. And then as you go further into the park, that's when you start to get to things like tigers and lions and bears, oh my. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to start off with some lighter things here, and then we're going to keep some small herbivores up the front here in their own little paddocks, with no viewing stations or anything, just people wandering past the fences to have a little look at them. And then as we move further back, we'll get to larger paddocks with some of the larger sort of roaming herbivores, you know, the trikes, what's the big ones with the long necks? The dills. Yeah, the dills. What am I trying to think of? Diplodocus. There we go. Thank you. Got there in the end. So yeah, that's going to be the idea. So here we go. They're starting work on the backstage area. And basically putting down the stuff that we're desperate for, the stuff that we need, which is basically your ranger, your ACU, and power. We're not going to be worried too much about sort of fossils and research here. We may place them down just for a bit of variation with the buildings, but obviously all the sort of fossils we find and research we do is going to be in the career mode, and then we bring that newfound technology and science over to here to implement it. So we won't actually need those buildings here, but we may, like I say, we may well place them down to kind of get some cool look, you know, a bit of a variation of building. We may also utilize the in-game, the three sort of branches in-game, security and science and entertainment, and sort of create their own areas. Science especially, there's quite a few sort of sciencey buildings that will fit quite nice together, and we can almost have like a science park in the building, in the park, sorry, a science area, and play it up as like a, like in a real zoo you would get something like a conservation area. Usually, I know there's especially Animal Kingdom in Florida, there's a lovely sort of, I think it's called Rafiki's Watch or something like that, a lovely conservation area that focuses a little bit more on the sort of natural sciences behind what they're doing in the park, which is great. So maybe have a little science park area for that, and then obviously, like I say, we've got some hotels area, and then some larger dino paddocks as well. And then obviously the weenie of the park, the big sort of go-to point has to be the gorgeous innovation centre. There we go, I couldn't think of the word. The big large visitor centre, the big pyramid building is going to go in the middle of the park, and we'll probably look at using the water feature there to make like a nice lake around it as well, do it a bit like an Epcot style, a large lake with the feature to the one side of it. Here I'm throwing down a hammered centre. This is not for keeps, all this pathwork and all that. I'm literally just sort of throwing it down out the way so that it's not in our way while we make the next couple of episodes, but it is going to be somewhere we can make some dinos. So we do have to obviously still grow the dinos even in Sandbox. They don't just appear. So we are going to make the dinos. You'll see here I'm trying to get some trees in, can't do it. Have a look on the other side. I think it looks loads better with a tree line breaking up the backstage there. So I'm placing some path down to kind of see how far away the paths have to be from each other to get that row of trees, because paths do get rid of trees. You'll see there some trees appeared. So it is a bit of a fine line, sort of playing around with the path line and sort of getting used to how much space is needed to actually be able to generate trees. Again, I would love to be able to see a tree placer eventually, even if it's just maybe like a selection of palms or something like that, that we can actually place down in rows or individually. I think that would be really well worth it. But here you'll see there's a bit of an interaction here between the monorail and the backstage areas, something I'm more than happy about. I would imagine that on the monorail there would even be a voiceover saying, "You're now going over the ranger station. The rangers are part of the team here that look after the dinos," all that kind of stuff. And in my head the lore of this kind of all works out. But water's a bit weird in this game. It raises the terrain up around it, so you have to do the water a little bit away from the fences if you want the fences to be flat. Obviously, we are going to have some terrain variation in the park once we get going, but this first area, with it being a sort of main street, traditional sort of entrance, I did want it sort of relatively flat and sort of quite manicured, I guess, for want of a better word. Zoos often are a little bit more terrain based than regular sort of theme parks. They do sort of often have to kind of go with the terrain that suits animals, but then also they're often sort of they kind of work with the terrain that they've got. The one that really springs to mind is Dudley Zoo, which is my local zoo growing up. It's not the best zoo, but it has some interesting things. A lot of the buildings there are listed, even though they're not very nice. They're a lot of sort of really sort of nasty 70s builds, but for some reason there's not really much they can do about them. And the whole zoo is built on a hill, so there's some really crazy sort of terrain features there, and really sort of crazy workarounds to get over some of the issues that they have there. It was really interesting to see, but yeah, definitely we are going to have some terrain changes as we go. But for now, I wanted this sort of first area to be relatively sort of flat and, like I say, sort of created all in one go. The idea this whole area would be flattened out and it be generated up. Trying to place down some individual trees. You can't quite get individual, but you can place, minimum sort of 1, 2, or 3. I'd love to know that it's a great bit of code, the tree generation in this, and they're able to generate a hell of a lot of trees with very little frame rate slowdown. So I'd love to know how that is working, because it does seem to be that they're almost sort of like pre-rendered on the map, and you're deciding to show them or not show them or something like that, because every time I clicked in the same spot there, you'll see the same 2 trees popped up. So it's really interesting. I'd love to be able to, somebody who understands the code better, sorry for knocking my microphone there, somebody who understands the code a bit better to be able to sort of talk me through it, because I do think it's an interesting way of doing it. Here we're doing a bit of a few upgrades on the ACU. I did notice that I did upgrades on the ranger station, but then I deleted it to move it, so I have to go back at some point and redo those. But yeah, there's no sort of move tool. Once it's down, it's down. And then the last thing we do is grow some struths. We do 4, and we use some of the new patterns we've got there to sort of vary them up a little bit. Again, a lot of this stuff is going to be unlocked as we go. So, as we progress in the career mode, we'll be able to bring all that new sort of science and tech and bring it over to this sandbox. But I know a lot of you wanted to see this style of play from me in the game, and I'll be honest with you, it's the style of play I wanted to do in this game as well. I'm really enjoying the Let's Play, to be honest with you. I am actually enjoying the game. Don't get me wrong, it has its issues. I think it's a little shallow, it's a little light, it plays a little bit like a mobile game, a lot of clicking and a lot of waiting around, but I am actually really enjoying still creating the dinos, getting the people in, getting the money in, solving the contracts. It is quite satisfying if it is just more, a bit of a Skinner box. But this is, really where I feel like I come into my own in video games. This sort of pushing and squeezing bits of creativity out of games, often to the detriment of gameplay. So there we go. There's your dinos going in. I'm just checking as they go down, they're happy. It's mainly with the room, because there's food. In fact, there isn't food. I realised when I saw that one of them was starving that there isn't food. So we placed down a bit of food. Again, they kind of mess around with the train a little bit. There's a bit of a clipping area around them that has to be cleared. It completely makes sense. So just a case of going back in and changing the few bits we'd already done. And I think that is pretty much where we're going to leave it. We're going to finish up with a couple of glamour shots to kind of show you. The last thing I do is, just because we've got a thing at the top there telling me the monorail isn't complete, so I literally just throw that round just to get rid of it because it was winding me up. And there we go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. There's the little goat dudes. Hopefully they'll stick around. If not, we'll come up with another option. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, you can give us a like. It really helps out the channel. And if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to have a chat, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at JohnTSparrow. And if you'd like to join in with the Geekism community, you can do so over on our Geekism Discord server. You'll find the link in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.